Hello. Um, Today I'm going to be talking to Elliot Walker. Elliot, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm shut the fuck up. Manny of the East on Instagram, smaller like art page. I'm trying to grow. Um, ElliotWalker on Discord, whatever else. Kind of just like a kind of like just I'm a just black artist from Detroit, and I'm kind of like you know deeply into politics, but I don't talk too deeply about politics all that often. But kind of just here to talk about some things on my mind specifically. There's other topics, but the main one I wanted to get to was um, kind of like my disengagement from the larger LGBT community is somebody that's bisexual, and why I kind of don't identify as a part of it, and kind of the discourse surrounding that and non-binary and transmedicalism. So that's what I'm here to discuss.
All right. Well, yeah, let's go straight into it. About transgender issues. Um, so would you state your opinion on transgender issues?
Um, Well, the thing is, I don't, um, Jesus. Yeah, I don't have an issue with transgender people. Like, I don't want there to be any sort of discrimination. Um, and I think that there needs to be, I think there needs to be like legal protection in place so that people that are transgender don't experience discrimination. Yada yada. My biggest issue though is I don't understand because I would probably describe myself as a transmedicalist. I don't understand why is that a bad thing, and I don't understand why it is that people want to consider non-binary to be um, transgender when there are people that um, were born as the female sex present femininely, but they insist that they're non-binary, which means that they're not, which means that they're transgender. But I'm of the belief that if you cannot say that you're transgender until you have, or I mean, some people can't afford surgery, or a sex reassignment surgery, which I completely understand. But I just have an issue with like the label of non-binary because what I'm seeing is a lot of people that are I don't know. I mean, historically speaking, transgender has been, I want to transition to the opposite gender. I don't understand the idea of somebody saying that they're not male or female. I think it's just like I think it's bullshit if I'm being frank about it. And and I think that the larger community at large is just confused. It's very they're just very there's too many different identities, too many different groups and overlaps. It feels like a never-ending cascade of ideas that they just keep adding on, and none of these labels people will really use in the real world, like polysexual, omnisexual, and all these are things that are highly online. And if you talk to somebody in the real world and you're like, "Well, I'm polysexual," they're gonna be like, "Well, what the fuck is that?" I mean, the only thing they really people really go by is like, "Well, are you straight, gay, or bi?" And all of these other identities, I just feel like are extra added filler and are unneeded. That's kind of how I feel about it.
I I think I strongly disagree with you because first of all, like if we're going to buy the transgender and like the non-binary thing to disagree with, I think if you acknowledge that gender is a social construct and if you can acknowledge that sex and gender are different, then I think we can resolve it pretty easily. I don't know. Do you believe that gender and sex are different and that gender is like
So,
a social construct?
so gender is a social construct, but is directly related to sex. So I think there is a social construct behind it, but there still is a biological fact behind why people act the way that they do, or why men and women act the way that they do. Their bodies are different. So, yeah, I understand that a lot of it is socialized, but what I don't understand is why is it just simply that you can't just be that you're a man that doesn't mind presenting femininely or whatever else, or you're a woman that doesn't mind presenting masculinely. I don't understand why does that then make you transgender and that allows you to wear the label non-binary. I think it's ridiculous. I think that that just means that, and it's not until you like I completely understand that gender is largely like social and sex is thing is something that's biological, but when somebody says that they're trans, that has always meant I have been born as a boy or born as a girl. Society is saying that I need to do these things as a boy or a girl. And as I got older, I decided to disengage from that and I identify as the opposite. So I want to medically transition. Now, I'm not transgender. Same, I'm cis, how they say it's cisgender. So it's not exactly something that but that I'm, I guess the most apt to talk about. But it just I don't understand, especially right now with what's happening with Hunter Schafer, the actress from Euphoria, and she's transgender, and they're saying that she's transphobic because she wants like her standard of people being transgender. She wants it to be that they have gender dysphoria and that they want to undergo surgery. I mean, that seems like such a basic um, requirement. So I think that this movement has shot itself in the foot by trying to be inclusive of everybody that is eating itself from the inside out because you cannot include everybody underneath. You have to gatekeep labels. And I don't care if it makes someone offended or it makes someone feel uncomfortable. You have to gatekeep labels or else there's no meaning to them. That would be like if I'm African American. If I said, well, you know what? Let's just make it that people that all you have to do to be African American is identify with Black culture. That's all you have to do is identify with it. And if you don't agree with that, then you're a bigot and you're trying to erase their African American identity. It's like, well, no, it is a physical thing. There's a physical history there. You have to have XYGs from this region, and it means that your ancestors were probably slaves, were victims of transatlantic slave trade. You're born here in this country. There's history there to the label. There's a physical meaning behind it. This physical. It's not just so I get that it's like a social construct there, but you cannot say that it's entirely socially constructed. And that I guess that's what my issue is.
Well, then we can talk about like how socially constructed it is, but I don't think that's relevant. I mean, the fact that it is socially constructed means to me that okay, we can acknowledge that all these different types of genders exist, right? Because like what you said, there is like a strong correlation between sex and gender. I get that, but it isn't
I
one to
disagree.
one.
I think that I disagree. I think that there's only two genders. There's male and female, and you have um I don't understand why would you say that there's more than two genders.
No, no, I would say gender is a spectrum. Like you can have male and female at the ends of it,
Yeah,
or you can have man and woman
but
at the ends
I
of it,
don't
and in the middle
I
there's
disagree
every
with that.
variation of it.
I disagree with that description. I would say I disagree with that. I think it's more so male and female, and then men and women both have different ways of experiencing masculine and feminine traits. That can be influenced by their hormones, social behavior, how they've been socialized, and whatever else. But you know, I think what you're getting at is like gender expression and none of this is really hitting on the fact that about like what it takes for somebody to be transgender. Um, I don't see why is it a bad thing again for it to be that you have to say that a person in order for somebody to be transgender, you have to have dysphoria, you have to want sex reassignment surgery. I don't see why that's something that's controversial because at this point then it means nothing to be transgender. All I have to do is say, "Oh, well, I don't identify as a man anymore." Then all of a sudden, that means that I'm transgender now. That's the issue that I have with it.
You think it's just too easy to be transgender then? Because I don't really care how easy somebody can call themselves transgender. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable in the gender you were assigned at birth, then I don't honestly give a fuck. And a lot of people currently like will be
Mean that you're
flippant about it.
transgender, but okay, listen, that doesn't make you transgender though. It doesn't make you
Yeah, but you
transgender.
you think it's essential to someone. I don't think that it is essential to someone.
Listen, okay, talk. Let's say we're talking about race, right? And I'm
Hmm.
talking about, you know, that I'm black. Okay, I've never identified with black culture. Never, never identify, or rather, I should say, I identify with it. But there are tons of sorry, excuse me, there are tons of things um, about black culture that I just simply don't have any issue. I don't have any desire to do. I've never been one to say, "Oh, let me do this because I'm black." Or when people say stupid things like, "Oh, well, you like skateboarding because you're like an Oreo or XYZ." I don't care about any of that shit. Those are things that are superficial. So when it comes to these things like about like gender and sex, not identifying with the sex that you were assigned at birth does not mean that you are transgender. I don't think that that should be enough. Just because you look at a set of stereotypes and a set of behaviors that they say that you should exhibit inside of or so that you should experience or perform, and you look at it and you say, oh well, you know what, maybe I'm a woman and I like having short hair, or I'm a guy and I or like me personally, I like to put on nail polish. um
No, but
none of that
that's exactly the gendered part of it, right?
none of that means that you but 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 I'm saying none of that is enough. And the difference between someone that is actually transgender and isn't is somebody that experiences gender dysphoria.
Yeah, but you can also experience gender dysphoria, don't have the surgery, and adhere to like the gender stereotypes that we have. Because I would argue that if you are, for example, a male and you are like you like wearing dresses, right? You like painting your nails and that sort of, so you like having long hair, and even if you don't have any surgery, you're still clearly transgender, okay? And even if you never want to transition in the first place, I would
I
still probably
disagree.
think that's transgender. Why? Because like the gendered aspects are all there, like the
You-
gender expressions are
Are they?
all there.
Are they? Did you say they have gender dysphoria or they don't?
Well, that depends on the
Because that's
person,
the
right?
only qualifier for me. Because if they don't have gender dysphoria, then it's simply a man that's just cross dressing. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying I don't understand why is there so much judgment for having like the medicalist position. I would identify as a transmedicalist, but I don't understand what harm does that do to
It
recognize
excludes
that.
people.
I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Well, because okay, do you think, for example, you can be do you think you can have gender dysphoria without transitioning, without thinking it's necessary to transition?
Say that again.
Do you think that it is possible to have gender dysphoria and never want to have like the surgery, even if it's available to you and you can have all the things and so and stuff? Do you think that is still like gender dysphoria?
That's a difficult question, but I would have to say no. I mean, if you have if you are, for the longest time, it's been that like you're transgender and you want to have a sex reassignment surgery, but you just can't afford it. Maybe you're afraid of the risks or things like that, and that's an issue behind whether you. I mean, as far as that's concerned, but if you have the ability to have it and and you don't decide to, or you don't identify with it enough, or you don't have any desire to go on hormones or anything like that, then no. I mean, that's just somebody that's cross dressing. Like I don't. I feel like that the category is being And I don't see why this is offensive for some reason. I mean,
No, I
you
don't
labels
see.
have to mean
I
something.
don't see why somebody like why is the surgery inherent to somebody being transgender? I don't see.
Because you don't have a dick or a vagina. When you say
But
that
that's
you're a
sex.
man in
That's
public,
sex. That's not
because
gender. That's sex.
that but people care, people put those two together. When you're in public and you identify as a man or you identify as a woman, 90% of the time or more, if not the entire time, people are gonna go, oh well, that probably means they have a dick. That probably means they have a vagina. They're not
Yeah,
gonna
but wait,
go,
wait,
oh
wait.
well,
Whoa, but that's
that way they're
different.
not gonna
That's
go, they're not
different.
gonna go, oh, that means they're a man. Huh, I wonder do they have a dick or a vagina? Because and if a person typically finds out that they have a vagina or the opposite of the opposite sex organ than the gender that they say that they are, they're going to go, oh, that's not a real man, or oh, that's not a real woman. That's the way that most people feel about it. If I'm in bed with someone
Whoa, 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 wait,
and
wait,
I'm
wait.
bisexual and
I
someone
don't care
says
about
they're a
ad
man,
populum. I don't really care how most people think about this.
but I think that that's relevant though. The purpose of labels is the purpose of labels is to so that there is a way for us to communicate with one another. So you can't just I don't think you can just do away with that in the conversation. It's absolutely relevant because this standard does not the average person is not going to take that extra thought. So historically speaking, if you say you're a man, that means that you have a penis. If you're a woman, that means you have a vagina. These are what the
Yes,
idea
that's
that's
sex.
what it
That
they
isn't no, that isn't gender.
yeah,
That's
sex and
sex.
gender are linked.
Yeah, they're linked, but they're not the
Sex and
same.
gender are linked.
So I would say I would define sex
I
as
didn't say they
like
were the same. I said that they were linked.
yeah, but you're implying so heavily that they are basically synonyms.
They basically
Because
are.
you wait, because if you're talking about like sex organs, that's sex, but you would say if you have like certain sex organs, then you are a certain gender. Like that's the issue, then there is no use for the gender distinction to be transgender. You just need to change your sex organs.
I don't look at I don't particularly look at. I mean, I don't mind using some of these pronouns, but um, this idea. I mean, the idea that you could transform what you were born with is I mean, it's untrue. I don't. I mean, it is. Now, I mean, you can get a post-op surgery so that you can try to look like the opposite sex of what you weren't born as, but those sex organs are not going to function the same. They're not going to look the same. They're not going to feel the same. So so basically, if you're born as a man, you're born as a woman, you're always going to be that, right? I mean,
Well, I
that's
would
what you're
make it
still
I would make
born.
a distinction between like male female for sex and like woman and man for like gender.
I don't under. Can you repeat that?
So if we talk about sex, I use like male female, and if we talk about gender, I use like man woman. So you can have a female man, or you can have like a male woman.
Is there any humming in my background?
No, not that I can hear, but if I don't have like my audio settings completely right, so I use push to talk. So sometimes I like I chip in, and then it's like coming from my
No,
end
I'm
anyways.
saying on my background, is there any audio? Is there like any for my game system?
No, no, you know you're all good. You're all good.
Okay.
But yeah, because if you're going to essentialize like, sorry, I like if you're going to essentialize being transgender as having certain sex organs or having like some sort of medical transition, then I would say that that's basically transsexualism. Like that's not transgender, that's transsexual. That's completely different. Like we as a society have an idea of what gender is, and if people represent like a certain way as a certain gender, then they are that gender, I'd say.
I think that look, so you can't get around what most people think about this, right? Because these labels exist to describe this is the dating world, how people interact with one another. When you take someone home that says that they're a man or a woman, that's what this is about, right? And as far as I mean, I don't think that you can't bring up society but then remove that from the argument, because
Who
the
gives a
reality
fuck?
of
No, who gives a
but I'm
fuck
saying
about these terms? We can
wait a
change
minute.
them.
Uh, what I'm saying is the reality of the matter is that people that are most people are identify with the sex that they were born as. That is the reality that they do
Yeah, that I
identify with
know.
that
Yeah.
sex. So what I'm saying is that I don't understand. Um, so I mean, I get there's a difference between transsexualism and then transgenderism. There's a difference there. Um, but I don't understand like what utility does that serve? Because I don't understand this. I
Well,
mean,
well, you can make the
if
argument
you
of
are
comfort.
if you're wait a second, if you're born wait a second, if you're born as a boy, you become a man, you're going through puberty, I mean you're saying you want to have a vagina. I mean that's what that means, right? So I just think I don't understand, again, like
No,
back to
wait,
my
wait, wait.
larger
No, no,
point
no.
about
I don't think that's a fair representation, because I think with that your entire argument can fall apart. Okay, if you are born as a boy or born as a man or whatever, you know, and you are and you don't feel comfortable with how you dress, with how you look, and that sort of stuff, um, and you want to like look more feminine and that sort of stuff, I would even say that that's like gender dysphoria. Like the way you present, like the boyish way or the manly way that you try to present, that's not aligning with how you envision yourself or how you think of yourself. And that's dysphoria. It doesn't even have to be like specifically about the sex organs. You can even be gender dysphoric
and I
if you
disagree.
have, yeah, yeah, I know that, but I don't think it be okay. So do you think, for example, what if you have somebody who is passing as a woman, but has never had like surgery? Um, would you then still call them he?
What do you mean by masking as a woman?
Like what if like a guy is completely like passing for a woman? Would you still call that person a
The
he?
only way for him to do that, the only way for him to do that is by going through like some sort of hormone therapy, having a surgery to possibly save down his Adam's apple. There's no way for a man to pass as a woman without going through those cosmetic surgeries that a transgender individual will go through.
But what
And
if he
when you
didn't? What if he didn't
wait
need
a
to
second,
go through the surgery to like present female or present feminine?
wait, wait a second. What you just described, I would not say that would make a person experience gender dysphoria. That would just be a man that does not identify with how, because that's how I feel. But that does not mean that I have gender dysphoria. I don't identify with, you know, as a man. Be with another man. Something.
This is better.
How about now? Is it better now?
Yeah, it's way better.
Yeah, I do not identify with the idea that because I'm a man, I can't wear nail polish, or I can't be with another man, or or different things like that. And it's different for everybody. The way that people exist with the sex that they were assigned at birth is very different. But me not identifying with that does not mean that I'm experiencing gender dysphoria. Now, if it gets to the point where I start saying, I feel like that there's no way for me to exist in this space that is considered a male space, a man space for me to exist as a man, and gender dysphoria it has very little to do with behavior, and I think it more so has to do with sex characteristics before like the behavior around them, right? Like it's, my chest does not look like a woman's chest, or my downstairs, the sex organ, I don't, it's not a vagina, it's a penis. So I want to go through these processes so that I can have that. So I can have that and I can exist as a woman. I can pass as a woman. That phrase, I can pass as a woman, would not exist without the inherent reality that they are not, an actual woman or an actual man. I mean, that's why that there is no way to actually become that opposite sex. There isn't. So the point, the idea behind it is that, okay, well, what do we do? Obviously, we don't want these people to hurt themselves and to kill themselves. But obviously, you don't mistreat them. So we say, okay, well, let's make it so that it's possible for them to get these types of cosmetic surgeries. We allow them to get gender reaffirming surgery, and so they can compact their dysphoria, and that is the battle that a transgender person goes through.
But
So
this
when you
is
completely
but to me
erase
this
that,
is
I just that's my issue with that. I don't think that you can, if you're completely removing that, then you're talking about someone that isn't transgender. You're just talking about a person that just is a woman or a man, and they just don't care about the culture around being a man or being a woman. I mean, there again, like there was a YouTuber I saw. I think her name was Khadija something, and she was like, "Yeah, well, most people consider that I'm a woman, but until they find out that I'm an NB baby." And I'm like, what the fuck is that even? I mean, I mean, born as a woman, she has breasts, you can see her breasts. And it's just like, well, I'm not, most people just assume that I'm a woman, but I've been NB for the past year. What the fuck does that? So, I mean, so you're a woman and you don't identify with what people say you have to do, but that's not it feels like a made up bullshit thing
listen.
is the way I
I
feel
really want to
about it.
stay on point. Okay, we can talk about NB shit later. Okay, but now we have to stay on point because your idea of
But
gender.
that's relevant. That's non-binary.
No, okay,
That's
yeah, I get it,
non-binary, and that's
I
related
get
to
it.
the
But
thing.
I cannot go that route if we do not address this first, okay? Because your idea of gender is inherent to like the sex organs they have, which is like really fucked up because then basically you're essentializing gender as sort of an equal to your sex. Like you acknowledge you can change your sex, but you can change your gender. But to change your gender is changing your sex organs. Like that's fucked up, right? That's basically transsexualism with like one extra step.
Um, I mean, I don't think. I mean, well, no. Truthfully, I don't recognize. Look, I mean, again, I don't really recognize a person as transgender as the actual gender. I don't.
Yeah, you don't
I
even
don't.
recognize gender exists in the first place with this reasoning. I don't even think you.
No,
I think you don't even know how important gender is for most people.
no. I get how important it is, but I'm saying for me personally, if I want to get in bed with a woman, there's men and there's women, and my idea of a man is a person with a penis and balls. A person is a woman is a person with a vagina.
Yeah, and
So
that's where you're wrong.
if I and I disagree, and if I'm choosing to get in bed with either a man or a woman, whichever one I prefer, that's what I want. Now, when you get into the transgender category, you are dealing with a man or a woman that doesn't want to be a man or a woman. I mean, that's physically what it is. I don't understand
So
why we have to like
yeah, but
sugarcoat around it or tiptoe
okay,
around it,
but
and more so play like these semantic games around what we know that it is. I mean, that's what it is. And I'm not saying, more importantly, that there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying, but like that's what it is though, right? I mean, that's what it is.
we can change definitions. Again, gender is a social construct. We can change what it means to be gender to be more broadening, to be more expansive, to be more inclusive to people. Because
I
the
I
idea of
don't
gender that you use has been used by many people before you because they equate gender and sexuality. But by equating them, you're basically negating the experience of transgender
you
people,
mean
right?
gender and sex.
Sorry?
You mean gender and
Yeah,
sex. You
yeah,
say
you're.
gender and sex.
Oh,
I
sorry, yeah.
I I think that there's a lot of overlap, and if you ignore that, I mean that's ahistorical. I mean,
I know there's a lot
gender
of
and sex.
overlap, but you do have to view them differently,
I
right?
don't think it's some. I don't think it's some. It's there. It mostly overlaps.
Yeah, so you don't
I
believe
mean,
in the concept of gender on its own. Don't think gender
sorry.
exists. You don't think gender exists. You just think there's there's sex and that's it. Because your definition of gender is like so little different from the idea of sex that basically you don't even get the idea of gender, in my opinion. You don't even see how relevant it is to the subject. You just have like a weird sort of changed definition of sex, and that's what you call gender. Like yeah, gender and sex go
What did
heavily
I
hand in
say?
hand, but that's not the same.
What did
But
I
you
say? It doesn't. What did I say? It doesn't
No, I'm
exist.
inferring from what you say because if you are equating like gender to the sex parts they have, then basically you're talking about like some sort of weird fucked up form of sex.
I don't understand what your point is. Are you contesting the fact that most people? I mean, most people who have male sex characteristics, their gender will be male. Most people who have female sex characteristics that are developing, they will identify as women. They will identify as female. So
I
I
don't
don't
care. I don't
under.
care about how the society. Sorry, I don't care like
So
how
that so
most
but
people
you're
think.
trying to erase that fact. So you keep saying, oh well, you're. I recognize that there is like a semantic difference. I get that there's like a semantic difference between the two, but in common
No, no,
vernacular, there is
there's no
overlap.
semantic difference. There is like a very fucking important thing, and I know people use it commonly like the same. Doesn't mean they're right though. Like
I understand that people
it's
can
like
correct.
okay, it's like saying for example like in a I don't know an edge case something. Okay, when somebody says like pants or a pair of pants, they're basically the same thing. Doesn't mean they have to be right or like uh, I don't know what a good example of this. Like most people use probably some words wrong, and if people use like the majority of society uses some words wrong, I don't give a fuck. Do we have we have definitions for like the words they use? Just because most of the people in our society use these words interchangeably doesn't mean that it is or that it has to be interchangeably.
Only reason that we don't want to use them interchangeably is to like deal with people that have gender dysphoria. Like it's to create a space for them, so
Oh well, then that's
they
fine,
feel
right?
like
Like
that.
then there's no harm in changing it. The only thing it's facilitating help for people who like are a minority. Oh, that's great. Then okay, then let's do it. I don't give a fuck.
No, I don't, and I don't necessarily agree with that all the time, though. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that all the time. I don't think that it. I mean, it's complicated. If
Does it do any
somebody
harm? Does
is
it do any harm to like make a distinct difference like I have?
sorry, can you phrase that again? The
Yeah.
mic cut out for a second.
Does does it make a difference? Like, sorry, if I make a difference in gender and sex, more lenient than you are, right? What if I make that difference? Is there any harm if I do so?
Um, Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, I think that there is because there are biological characteristics that you cannot overwrite.
No, wait, no.
Um,
No, that's sex. That's sex. If there are sexual characteristics, then it's
gender is
sex,
gender is tied to
but
sex.
not
I don't know
inherently.
why. I don't know why you people try to pretend like that it is not. It is.
No,
I
yeah,
mean,
but it's
gender
not
is tied to
inherently. Wait,
sex.
no, no, no. But it's not inherently tied to it. Gender and sex are tied to it, as
Well,
in we have an idea of what a woman is and how they should act, and we have assigned that to like the sexual characteristics of like boobs and like a vagina, right? Same with men, but then with the penis, that's it. And we have
uh-huh.
assigned them, okay, they need to be masculine, they need to be strong, etc., and they need to be feminine, and that
Look,
entails like high beauty standards and stuff.
what I'm
No, no, no,
saying
no.
is
Wait,
is
because that is all sex and gender linking next to each other, but they don't have to be. And that's the distinction between sex and gender. Like you're born with your sex, and your gender can change over time.
so do you think that it's possible for a man to become a woman?
Yes, that's gender. Yes.
What the fuck does that mean? That a man it's possible for a man to become a woman. I mean, it's possible for him to go through, like, it's possible for him to imitate a woman by going through different surgeries and getting different hormones
Yeah.
and stuff, but he still is a
No, no,
man.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. He's male. That's why I make a distinction between sex and gender. Male, the organs and the genomes and stuff you're born with, right? And everything that comes with it. And gender is the way you express yourself. It's are you trying to be masculine? Are you trying to be strong? Often refer to stereotypes, but that's what it is. Gender is just a stereotype.
So yeah, I get the difference between like but again like sex and then gender. I didn't say I didn't,
No, but you
but
clearly have a different definition than I, because every time I bring up gender, you bring up sex organs and say, okay, now they've changed their
because
gender.
I think that there's an because there is an inherent there is an inherent social construct that is tied to having those specific sex organs. I mean, it is. I mean, if you are existing in society, if it didn't matter, then nobody would have to use that label. If using the label man or woman said nothing about what sex organs you have, then people before they get in bed, they would not
Yeah,
disclose that. Why do you think
yeah,
that
wait, wait,
you
wait,
have to
yes, yes,
disclose that?
yes, I completely agree. Okay, the only thing that should matter is sex, and gender is just like basically a stereotype of masculinity and femininity. I completely agree. I'm a gender abolitionist. Now, we live in a society where gender needs to be as fluid as possible, right? So that we can eventually remove the entire definition of gender, and nobody will have to feel discomfort by not appealing to like a certain gender stereotype or stereotype in general. That's what I believe. But
I
as for
don't.
right now,
I don't agree with all of that. I don't agree with all of that. I don't see the harm in there being I mean, I don't see there being a harm in there being like a in societal norms around gender. I don't see what harm that does.
you don't see how gender norms are harming people in society.
Um, I didn't say that. I get that it can be harmful to individuals, but for most people, it's fine.
Yeah, but
This is
most
a
people are
very
cis. And even then, I would argue that cis people are like still also like having the consequence of this fucked up ideology. Like
what
men,
ideology?
like if you're like, for example, how do we view men? Like strong, right? Like courageous, or unable to take care of a child, right? These are negative stereotypes because if people believe that they have a certain expectation they live up to, if they don't think that they are
Okay, at
living
this
up to that
point, okay,
expectation,
look at this.
yeah, then eventually, if they don't live or they don't think they live up to the expectation, that can lead to like uh, um, a massive dent in like their self confidence, right? This is why this is like one of the parts that men are so miserable today because their toxic
But
masculinity
that's.
is
I mean,
like
you're
not
moving.
socializing.
Okay, Zeva, you're moving on to something that has to do with like misandry, and then people just simply being uneducated about
Yeah, but that's because of their
just
gender.
men
That's
and women,
because they
right?
are
I'm
informed of their
stereotyping for that,
gender.
but that doesn't. Uh, I don't understand this. The main thing I wanted to talk about was non-binary and how that
But I
doesn't make
think this
any
is important.
sense.
This
I
is
don't
important to
understand
men.
how. I don't see why it is.
Okay, let me ask them a few questions. Okay, maybe we'll get more constructive. Okay. Okay. Do you think that being being courageous is inherent to men?
Is inherent to men.
Yeah, it's like an inherent part of that of their sex.
I already know where you're going with this line of questioning, but I'll go ahead and say no. It's not.
Okay, great. Do you think that it is inherent in women to take care of a child, to be caring?
If it's their child, then yes.
You think that's
But
inherent to women?
adults, if it's their child, then yes. But adults in general have a desire to take care of children. But if you're talking about like a man and a
Well,
woman,
then of
they
course
produce
it's
a
not
child.
essential to women, right? Because if both can have it, then I do
No,
you think there can be
I
like
disagree.
women
I think
who
that
cannot care?
you're cutting me off. I disagree. I think that there is a minor more. I think that there's a smaller, more nurturing, um, behavior that is naturally experienced by a woman that is capable of harming a child.
Wait, could you repeat again? You're like
So
cutting out. Wait, you're
I
cutting
don't
out.
think that it's major though. I said I think that there's slightly more nurturing behavior there naturally from women than men, but I don't believe that it's major enough that it's worth even for the sake of the conversation. I'll mention it because I don't. I mean, some women are abusive to children, some men aren't, and some men, you know, you can't. generalize like that. But
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that because a woman can produce a child, then yeah. But I no, but I'm disagreeing. I'm saying that men and women can both be nurturing to children, but
Yeah,
I think
I
that a
know, I
woman
know.
naturally
I agree
has a
with
more
you.
nurturing behavior.
I agree with you. I don't think there are characteristics inherent to men or women. I don't think that there is. Do you? And you clearly don't think that there is some inherent factor in like men and women, right? It is not inherent.
That there is something inherent for a woman. Yeah, I do.
Okay, then I would say that's essentialist, but I'll be able to skip that. Okay, let's for example say that like the most things that we attribute to men and women are not inherent to them, right? So the problem is we as a society still view them as like these characteristics. Would you agree?
Um, rephrase the say it again.
Okay, okay. I'll try to rephrase it. I think it's a poorly asked question. Okay, give me some time. Do you think that men and women both have to live up to different expectations of what society asks from them?
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay, so now we have arrived at a problem, right? Even though none of these characteristics or like expectations that they have of these people isn't inherent to them. So what's going to happen if they do not think that they will abide by those standards or if they will not succeed in having those standards, then you can have a dysphoria, right? You can have issues. You can have bias by judges and whoever the fuck else, right? So I would say that that's all gendered. The expectations we have, the what do you call it? The expectations we have, the characteristics we attribute to them, that's all gender. And the sex part is like their organs, like the literal biology. And I think if you make that distinction, then you can see how transgender people are like transitioning from like the masculine stereotype to maybe a more feminine stereotype. But this is I have to keep in mind, this is a spectrum. Like you don't have to be like fully transgender, like you don't have to be like fully female expressing or womanly expressing yourself to be a trans woman.
Fully
But you can also
knowledgeable
like
about
be
this, but I'm fully knowledgeable about this. Okay, I've read about this. I know about gender dysphoria and all of this. So if you recognize that a person is transgender, is has gender dysphoria, how can you say that a non-binary person is also trans?
well,
That's what this is
if
about.
it's a spectrum, well, then you can move anywhere on the spectrum, right? I would say that if you
But
have
that's
like,
defeating the purpose. That's defeating the
what do you think?
purpose.
Wait, what do you think the purpose of gender is? Because if after all I explained just now, and we agree on that concept of gender, like, what's there?
What's the purpose of it?
Yeah, what's the purpose
It's
of then
it's
attributing masculinity and feminine
it's
traits?
highly individual. Is highly individualized, but I think that it more so it has to do with it describes how a person exists in society as far as their romantic and their sexual behavior in life.
No,
I
but
think that
well, no,
that's
we
what it
have
has to.
sex. We have sex for that. No, we have sex for that. We don't no,
People,
that's not gender.
dude, people put them together. People put them together. People are not putting. People are not. See, this is an unrealistic standard that you have. You're going through extra thought that people do not do about these things, about these issues, and I don't think it's necessary to do it. Most of transgender people make up less than what is it like? Maybe under 11% of the
Who gives?
population. It
Whoa,
might be
whoa.
even
Who
less than
gives a
that.
fuck? Wait. Who gives a fuck?
Yes, I
How
give a
many
fuck. I think it's
percent?
relevant because you're saying
Why?
because your worldview says that the average person should go through extra thinking. Okay, well, does this person identify as non-binary? Do they
It's
use
so
they them
difficult.
pronouns?
Takes a bit
They
of
have all these different
thinking.
things, and
No,
it's
who
a
gives a
minor
fuck?
part of the population.
You even have to think about somebody's name when you speak to them. If you like add on like a little bit of like pronouns, that's fine. I would even be in favor if we abolish the entire idea of pronouns and just call each other comrade. Okay, like that's my ideal world. Okay.
I don't understand. We keep circling around in a circle. If you read, so do you think that a person needs gender dysphoria to be transgender? Yes or no?
Yes, but I do think you can also like use other
So then you
pronouns and be
cannot
gender
agree with
dysphoric.
the. So stop there. But so that means you cannot agree with the non-binary concept because a lot of people that are non-binary and the entire non-binary movement, they would argue that they do not need gender dysphoria to be transgender.
Oh,
A lot of them
wait, what were you saying?
that's
You were saying that people need to be gender dysphoric to be transgender.
in order for a person to be transgender, isn't it a requirement that they have gender dysphoria? Because I would argue that it's yes, and if you don't have gender dysphoria, you cannot call yourself transgender. Now, there's
Okay,
a bit of
wait.
back and
I
forth
have to
right
think
now as
about
far as
that.
non-binary.
Okay, I'll take back what I said. I think, wait, so to have gender dysphoria means you're uncomfortable, in my opinion, and to be like transgender means you have like adult pronouns and adopt the characteristics of that, of the opposite gender or like another gender. I have to think. Okay, okay. What if we have this situation? Okay, like what if someone is gender
Well,
dysphoric
I
but is
wasn't.
not
Wait a second.
transgender?
Wait, no, I wasn't finished with my train of thought. I was. Wait a second. I wasn't finished with my train of thought. There is back and forth right now about non-binary people, and some people are saying, well, some non-binary people experience dysphoria. Some of them don't. Whatever else, but gender dysphoria typically is supposed to mean that like you want to identify with like a specific like a specific identity, male or female. So like if a person is non-binary and they're saying, well, I'm just not going to identify as either one, I don't understand how does that make any sense because it's impossible for me to wrap my head around because I think that like I mean, I don't know. It's such a contentious topic. I mean, it's such a contentious topic because when you're out and you're dating and you keep trying to overall, what does it matter what people think about it? Because that's what these labels are for. These labels are for
No,
people to think about.
no,
They're
because
for
these
people
labels,
to use.
wait, these labels are formed by how we use them, right? So if we use a word over and over again in
Yes,
a different
therefore,
meaning that
so
the
you
word,
cannot,
yeah,
in the
wait,
conversation about this, you cannot erase it. You can't, wait a second. You cannot just erase it and go, well, what does it matter that the fact that people, when most people mean man, they mean a person with a dick? That's relevant to the conversation. You
no,
can't just
because we can
remove
change
that.
definitions. We can change definitions.
And I don't agree. I don't agree that the definition should be changed. I don't think
Why
that the
not? Wait,
definition
it's
should be
more
changed.
inclusive. Why? Why? If the definition is more inclusive, then it does
I
no harm.
don't I don't see why that's my problem. I don't see why that's my problem. I don't see why it should be changed. I mean, I
Well, okay,
don't
but
see why it
okay,
should be changed.
what if the definition, if we change it, then it will make people feel more included, and there's no harm to it. Would you still be against it? Like
Dude, I
we
mean,
call not, yeah.
that's such a circular argument. Or I'm sorry, not like a circular argument, but that's such a loaded question because I mean, you just asked me like, what if? I mean, obviously, I think that there is harm, so I can't even agree to that. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Hypothetically, if there was no harm to people to erasing the way that we've been using the term man and woman, then yes, there is. I think that
No.
I would argue that there is some sort of harm to it.
Which harm is there to it?
There's the historical fact that that as far as like male and female identity, that there are biological differences between male and
We
female
can change
sex,
definition. That
and
doesn't
how.
matter. No, we can change definition. That doesn't matter. Just because we used like some words in the
Oh
past and
boy.
it means no, because this is important. Okay, we can change definitions. That's how we went. Because back in the day, you used to call fuck, what was it? If you have like little children, they would all be called girls. But now we have changed the definition, and girls only means like a young woman. But back in the day, it used to be a
Hey,
little boy and a young girl. Sorry, and a young woman. And that was both
Yes.
girl.
Yeah.
And now
So
we've
I
changed it. And now we can change the definition of gender as well. It isn't really that
Yeah, so at
hard.
this point, I think that we've come to a point of just complete utter disagreement because I don't see because as far as like my personal life goes, I'm not going to change my outlook on sex and gender to please people. I'm not going to change it to where you know I'm not going to do it. I mean, transgender people. The day that transgender people make up, and I don't mean non-binary people. I mean transgender people and that like you are born as a man born with male characteristics and you want to transition to a female um or you don't want to undergo male puberty or whatever the case may be or vice
So,
versa. And wait, I'm not done until the day comes that that number of people increases from being the small miniature amount that it is. I do not see why I need to change my personal outlook because the majority of people identify as men have a penis and balls and other things. You identify as women have a vagina and the other sex characteristics that go with that. There is no utility to me putting this amount of thought into it as you're putting into this.
oh, okay. So
So I think we
again,
should just move on to a different topic because I think it's pointless.
okay, I want to do like one quick rant and then we can go to a different topic, okay? Because I think the idea of gender itself is a harmful concept. And by having the fluidity of transgender people, that's amazing. Now we can all acknowledge, okay, gender is like fucking useless. We should abolish it. Great. Everybody's now a Conrad. Now, if you have, uh, um, if you would change the definition, that's completely fine. We've changed definitions for like hundreds of
Why
fucking
should
years.
gender why should gender be abolished? Why should gender be
I
abolished?
think gender basically means like negative stereotypes of like masculinity and femininity, and I don't
See,
think we should
you feel
attribute
that
that.
way. You feel that way. I don't feel
Yes,
like gender should be abolished.
most people do that. Most
You
people
feel that
think like
way.
gender is like harmful.
You feel that way. You feel that way that gender should be abolished. I feel comfortable with identifying with my male gender. I don't want the male gender identity to be abolished. I
No, no,
don't
wait,
agree
wait,
with
no.
that
Male,
outlook.
male is sex,
I don't agree
and
with it.
okay, okay, wait. You can still be like a male and masculine if gender is abolished. It just means that it wouldn't be called masculine. It would just be a thing that happens. It's like saying like if we're going to race,
That's
for example. No, no, wait. No,
ridiculous.
we can do this with race as well. Okay, like if you have like a stereotype of like a black guy, or like if you have like a stereotype of like an Asian person, I would say that that's sort of basically racist. But if you talk about gender, gender can have like the same sort of stereotypes tied to it. But if you abolish the idea of gender, if you abolish the idea that there are certain stereotypes that people need to adhere to, then everybody can be anything, you know? And it's the same with race. If we would abolish the concept of race, like Asian people can be good at basketball, and like I don't know, like black people can drive. You know, that's possible. That's
Okay,
all
stop,
possible.
stop, 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 stop. You cannot compare these conversations around sex and gender to ethnicity
Oh,
and race.
I
Okay, I mean you
absolutely
cannot.
can. Yes,
These are
absolutely.
not analogous. They are not analogous. You cannot do that, and it's actually kind of insulting. I mean, you cannot compare those two.
Listen,
Those
if
two
this if
things.
you can do this as a third topic like next week or something, okay? But what I'm saying, you know, yeah, you have to look into it. You know, these are like the same thing. Race is only skin deep, and
No,
we
I
still
don't. I don't.
attribute like stereotypes
Listen, I
towards race.
don't agree. Listen, I don't have anything against transgender people. Number one. Number two, I don't agree with transgender ideology. I don't agree with it. Now, somebody might agree with it and they might
Yeah,
live their
you've
life
made
away.
it
I don't
abundantly
agree
clear.
with it. I don't. Huh?
Now you've made it clear that you don't agree with the trans ideology. Yeah, get that.
Yeah, I don't. I'm
I
sorry. I don't
I
agree
have
with
one
it.
question though. Like, okay, let's say you see somebody, you know, walking on the street, you know, wearing high heels, a dress, long hair. What would you call them? Like, which pronouns?
Boy. Zeva, let's move on to a different topic because we're just gonna go around in
No,
circles
no,
around this
no.
shit. I already know
Just
where
the
this
last
is gonna
question. Just the
go.
last. It was the
Let's
last
go to a
question.
different topic. Because I'm going because it no because it's such an obvious trap because if I say that I'm thinking that that's a woman you're gonna say well aha well that proves well actually it could just be a man that's cross dressing that proves that it's entirely a social construct. I don't feel like going through the back and forth about it. I don't.
Okay,
So I
I'm
mean maybe we
glad
should
you're
just
already
move on
familiar
to a
with the
different topic.
arguments.
I don't.
Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna like get some Coke, okay? Like a cola.
I mean I don't have anything. I want to say this for the record. Okay, it's not like I hate transgender people or some shit. I don't have anything against people that are transgender. And like, if a transgender person does not go through what they need to go through, the cosmetic surgeries to exist physically the way that they want to, they have a higher suicide rate. There's higher suicide rates for people that don't medically transition. For those that don't versus those who do. So I'm not saying that I would, if I was out in public and I can tell someone is transgender, I'm going to mistreat them or look at them like they're inhuman. But because we're having a debate and a discussion, I'm making it known that I personally like the traditional ideas behind sex and gender.
Yeah, I know.
And it's as
I'd call
simple
you
as
a
that.
conservative. Yeah, in this regard, I think you're conservative. Yeah.
I'm not a conservative.
No, no. In this regard, you are. Yeah.
As far as, well, yeah, as far as that goes, but that's about it. That's like maybe the only conservative position I have. So why don't we move on to um socialist or
Yeah,
as far as
socialism,
because you said you're
capitalism,
a
right?
leftist.
Sorry?
You said that you're a leftist and I'm
Yeah.
more of a liberal. So why don't we move on to that?
All right. How do you want to start? Like, do you want to explain why you think capitalism is good, or like, do you want to know why socialism is good?
Um so as far as this conversation goes, you might have more of a chance of moving me over because um I'm still I've been reading on the differences for some time. Um I'm still trying to understand whether, because I would describe myself as a social democrat, I would say that I'm in favor of capitalism. I'm not against, I'm sorry, I'm not for a wealthy class. I don't see why any individual needs billions of dollars to live. I'm for like redistribution of wealth and physical assets, X, Y, and Z. But as far as what I disagree with is that it's a fairly complicated topic, which is why I didn't want to spend a lot of time on the previous one. This one is more important to me. Um, I don't I don't see how how do I say this? I think that the issue might just be that there are people that are taking advantage of higher like societal hierarchies. But I don't believe that the problem is capitalism. I think it's just the problem is selfishness. And I think that even if you hypothetically had a socialist system, you would still deal with people being selfish and taking advantage of other people. So I guess that's like where I just have like a disagreement with like a I just have like a misalignment with that ideology because I don't think that, I mean, it's hard to describe. Um, it's hard. I'm still trying to understand it. So I say that I'm a liberal because I identify with social democracy. Um, but I would say I'm not a socialist simply because I do recognize that, like, I don't have anything against the idea of like private ownership, setting up businesses, corporations, and whatever else. I just think that we should have proper means to get rid of those corporations and companies that exist inside of this capitalistic country. I'm assuming you're not from America, so it's the same standard of a first world country to get rid of those entities where they start abusing their power. Um, I'm pro unions, pro worker unions, pro you know, you know, every single thing like a social democrat would be in favor of. So
Yeah.
I guess my question is why should I be a socialist?
All right. Um, Real quick, I'm gonna address Real Mighty Joe. Yeah, you can be identified as transracial because that's also social construct. Yeah, I call him a conservative because I think the position on this specific topic was a pretty conservative one. Okay, next to what you said.
Wait a minute, what
So,
about transracial?
transracial is also like a valid identity. It's not yet as common, but I do think it's valid. Um,
Are you talking about, wait a second, are you talking about a person believing that they're an opposite race, or are you talking about where a person is adopted into a race that they're not bio, like for example, if I was adopted by a white family, therefore I'm transracial. You talking about that one?
Yeah, like race isn't really biological, it's more like a culture thing. Anyway, let's
No,
get back.
okay. No, wait a second. Wait a second. I want to make it known that I think that's where, if you're talking about, there's a thing called like a transracial adoptee, which is an individual that they are adopted into a household that is a different race of what, like, let's say if I was black, I was adopted by a white family or whatever. That would be, I was mean, I was transracial. I was born, rather, I was raised away from, I guess you could say, the culture that has to do with my race. But if you're talking about a person identifying as like I'm black and I think that it's possible to transition to a white person or white man. I'm hoping that's not what you mean.
Well, yeah, it could be, depending on how the culture and you adapt to it. Like if people see you as like white, you're white. If people see you as black, you're black. But
Zeva,
you wanted to continue on socialism
what?
versus capitalism, right?
No, wait. I want to know more about this. What,
Okay.
what if, okay, before we go into that, I mean, are you talking about, I might just let this topic go because I don't think there's any way I could talk about this one without, I mean, you
I
got to
agree.
just laugh at it, sir. But do I'm saying, are you saying that you view race, or rather, that so trans racial. I'm not talking about transracial adoptee. Are you saying that you think that it's possible for why don't you explain your what do you mean? Because I'm hoping you don't mean what I think you're meaning. Because I thought that you meant the other thing, which is what Cat Black made a video about how she's transracial and she was born or not. Sorry, not oh, wait, sorry, not Cat Black. Somebody that Cat Black interviewed and how they explained that they're transracial, which means that they were adopted into a white family, so they were raised away from the culture, but there's still a black woman that was just raised inside of a white culture. That doesn't mean that they're white. Are you saying that if a black person or a person is different, that if they're raised in that culture, then that therefore means they can identify as white?
I think that if we talk about race, I would also say that's a social construct. We have some stereotypical characteristics tied to race, and if you adopt those characteristics, then yeah, I think you could be like a transracialist. Yeah.
Yeah, everything is a social construct, isn't it?
Well, do you think race is biological?
I don't want to debate race with you. It's not worth it.
Okay, I hope you don't have like race realist like positions or something.
It's not. I don't know what I would describe it as, but I know that what you just said is like patently absurd.
Yeah,
It's you.
okay.
I mean, there's social. There's social. There's a social construct behind like behind race, but there's still like a real biological characteristic behind like certain behind an idea. You can't say that like. I mean, it's like is everything just a social construct? You can't just put the
I'm
label
against
social
like yeah,
construct behind
yeah,
something
yeah, wait, on
and then
most
just
issues
erase it. I mean, it's fucking
on race
insulting
and
to me.
gender, yeah, on race and gender, yeah, you can. Yeah, I would say race and gender are a social construct. I don't think it has the only thing it has to do with like your biology is the color of your skin. That's influenced by genomes and stuff, but everything else, no, that's just that's not has nothing to do with race. I reject the idea of essentialism like completely. Okay, I don't think like there are inherent differences between men and women. I don't think there are inherent differences between the races. So yeah, or at least they're not significant enough to even acknowledge. I don't know where he is. I think he left. I'm gonna try to get a hold of him. No, I think he blocked me. I'll talk to him if he comes back, but I don't think he will.